Mr. Miles,
Mr. Miller.
good to see you back again.
I know. This was meant to be. And I'm excited about our new areas of focus that we'll reveal here in a few minutes. But I'm better when I get to see you once a week. So if nothing else personally, I'm gonna enjoy every second of this.
Yes. Well, let's talk about what we're up to for this series, right? We talked about doing 12 episodes, just 12 conversations where we get together and we explore something that's of interest to us personally, hopefully will be of value to others who find this through whatever means they may. And we talked about for this go round, if we spent some time talking about relationships, talking about what makes them last, what makes them great. If we make some time for something wonderful, something good that you've discovered as you've lived each week, at least one thing, could be more. And also spend a bit of time talking about prayer, this topic that I've been deep into for the last 3 years, something that was never a part of my life before I started writing a book about it, but to just explore a little bit about what I've discovered in the process of writing, researching, talking about, or maybe even the creative process itself, some of the things that are coming up. So reserving some space for that. Well, let me start by saying this. This is a project, this book that I've now drafted and gone through 3 rounds of professional editing on, and am completing an early reader process with about 20 readers, is something that was kind of out of left field for me. And prior to waking up one morning and hearing a little voice inside my head say, you should write a book about prayer, it was not a part of my life, not particularly religious, even though I was raised in a fairly traditional faith household. But, over the last few decades, prayer is not something that had been a part of my life. And I heeded that prompting, made a plan, interviewed a bunch of people, asked them what their experience with prayer was, what their understanding of it was, what benefits, if any, they'd found from it. And not just believers, by the way, scientists, atheists, agnostics, skeptics. So trying to get the broadest perspective as possible. And it's been a very, very interesting project. And I will say this too, you talked about you're at this gathering and this subject came up. That's been my experience. And I don't know how much of this is the change and the uncertainty that's happening in the world today, where in some ways we know more than we've ever known, right? Like, is there anything AI doesn't know? It's pretty remarkable. And
Yes.
I tend to think that that's kind of a forcing function. It's kind of part of a natural flow in our society where the more we know, the more we know we don't know.
Yes.
Or at least we sense that, and we're looking for what is it that is beyond what we know or even what is knowable. So that's not a surprise to me that this is something that, it's always been an interest and a concern for people to know, why am I here? What is this about? Is there something bigger than me? But I think people are feeling it particularly acutely today with all of the uncertainty and all of the unknown and all of the known.
It reminds me of my insignificance and the whole totality of lifespans, from the first breath to the last breath of human beings on this planet. I love when I see these timelines, where you could see 10,000 years and then just keep zooming in on your 80 years on the planet. Wow. Right. It seems really insignificant.
Yeah. And, the term geologic time or cosmic time, right? To put a human lifespan in that scale, it can definitely seem insignificant for sure. Well, the thing about prayer with this, I understand that this can be, it's both a subject I think that turns people off in some way or makes them lean in. And I think there's this immediate reaction that's like, well, what's the come from? You're going to talk to me about Jesus? Are you trying to sell me something?
Yeah.
Right. What's your angle? Where's this coming from? And I think that's totally normal. Right. Nobody wants to be sold anything. Nobody wants to be preached to or converted. Somebody else's project. Like, I totally get that. for me, writing this book has been a way of exploring where I think a lot of people are, by the way, that, we see in the research, if people are asked what is their religious identification, the largest categories that are coming up, at least in the United States, are none, right? Not NUN, but NONE,
Yes.
nuns, or SBNR, spiritual but not religious. So there's this growing number of people that are not identifying with any traditional religion. And yet, I think as human beings, we're still hungry for connection. We're certainly hungry for meaning. So that's pretty normal. And for me, this is a way of exploring something that I had left behind. I had left prayer behind when I had left the religion of my upbringing behind, which is why the book is called Reclaiming Prayer. As much as I'm not attempting to persuade or convert anyone to anything, I'm inviting them to consider that there might be value in something that they walked away from when they walked away from the traditional, like maybe the dogma of an organized religion.
Right. Well, I do have questions. I know you have something you want me to react to, but just the definition of just the word prayer, like what's implied by that? What's the evidence that one would expect before, during, or after that prayer had actually occurred?
Yeah. Well, Dean, I explore that thoroughly in chapters 6 and 7. Does prayer work? Right? Does prayer work? And what are the benefits of prayer, if there are any?
Right.
Really, with this, I just wanted to begin, open a conversation with you that we can continue over the next few weeks. And with today, just really, exploring this idea of the value that prayer might have in one's life, even if it's distinct from, I would say, an organized religious affiliation. So with that, I would just ask you, Dean, I know this is getting personal deep. I'm not going to ask you about the war in Iran.
I like it.
Just ask you, I'm curious to know from you, what is your relationship with prayer? What was it like when you were young and in your family I would say your family of origin? And what's it like today?
Yeah, it's a good question. I couldn't help but just thinking that, even as you're sharing your own story. And even if I were to identify which category, I would say spiritual but not religious. Grew up a Baptist, then Assembly of God. Prayer has always been something that's been part of our house. Probably from my earliest memory is just a prayer of before a meal, which to this day I can kind of like, what are we even doing right now? Like what's the point of that? Then I think for a long time just saw prayer as somehow begging, pleading with change the course of history, or make pain go away, right? Or give favor when maybe favor wasn't even earned. Like, hey, I didn't apply myself. I didn't do the homework, or I didn't prepare for this interview. Please just help me get this job, right? Those types of prayers. I think at 56, when I think of prayer now, I find myself more in a position of gratitude. So less asking and more just recognizing the moment, the day, the opportunities. That's helped me a lot. That doesn't keep me just sounding like a spoiled child of just give me more, give me more, give me more, make my life easier and better. Not that those things are wrong or bad, but I think I've got some sort of an internal clock or ratio that I've got to be thankful 10 times for every time I ask for, make this bad thing go away.
Thanks for exploring that with me. I realize this is a deeply personal question, right? And one that
really is.
Not only is it personal, that it's one that I realize a lot of people don't want public, right? Part of it is, I think we're all sorting through it still ourselves. It's an understanding. It's a dynamic process, even our understanding or relationship with prayer, because of course our relationship with prayer is relationships to something greater, right?
Yes.
So I appreciate you being willing to kind of dive into that with me. I'll share with you. I was in. I think I could talk about. I could name the name here. Years ago, I was in the offices of Charity Water in New York City, interviewing Scott Harrison, the founder there, who had written a book called Thirst about his work bringing clean water now to more than 700 million people around the world. And in his book, Thirst, he says, I was a flawed founder who prayed for guidance constantly. I think that's the exact sentence. So in
Mhm.
our interview, I asked him way back then, years ago, I suppose this was, and this was like a 90-minute interview. So I covered a lot of things. It wasn't just about his faith or whatever. But I asked him about that, because I know a lot of uh, creators, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of leaders, right? We're always looking not only for an edge, but we're looking for strength. We're looking for what's going to help us to persevere. And I asked him about that sentence, and my memory was he basically shut down. Like, as someone who was a fundraiser globally, who worked with, people of all backgrounds and beliefs, I don't think he wanted to go on record as talking about, his prayer practice. It was pretty interesting that even though
Right.
he did write a line speaking to it, he didn't want to talk about it in an interview. Subsequently, I did talk to him for this book about prayer, and he shared with me a really remarkable story that I won't get into now. But my point is, again, I know this is a very personal thing that could be sensitive to share. So I appreciate you sharing so openly today.
Yeah, you're welcome. And this might be, where we start to transition for my my one good thing
Yes,
this week.
let's do it.
And it really is on the topic here, and it's something that I've been exploring probably the last 3 or 4 weeks, Brilliant, with clients, but oftentimes, right, when we're working in service of others, you can't help but look in the mirror, right? I think that's probably a wise, normal, and maybe even a healthy thing to do. It's just my understanding of this difference between what do I believe and then what conditions do I protect? Like, what do I tolerate? What do I value? How does this actually show up? Because I think there are some things that I have a really strong belief for, but you wouldn't know it because my life doesn't show you that I believe that,
Okay, give me
right?
an example of this.
Well, so let's just go back to even physical health. I have a belief that my physical health is really important to me. But when I'm shoving down Big Macs, right, with 2 McDonald's apple pies, you're gonna be like, I don't, well, it's not that I even verbalize that my physical health is important to me, but I believe that in my soul. But therefore, not therefore, but in spite of the conditions. So think about these 4 blocks. There's beliefs, there's conditions, there's the culture, and then there's the outcome. And these things are aligned, should be. But I often find in myself and looking at real complex strategic situations with the clients that I have. Again, now going back and looking in the mirror, my belief and my outcomes are not aligned. So then when I start going upstream and downstream from 1 to 4, belief to outcome, where I have the most control is that box 2. And it's what are the conditions that I am protecting, that I value. But then if I go to my notes, people are reading me all the time. Not my intentions, not what's in my heart. They read the conditions. What do I take time for? What do I let slide? What do I reach for when I'm tired? That's where you're actually seeing what does Dean really believe or not.
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge believer that what we believe and what we value, the proof of that is in our behavior, right?
Yes.
We can say a lot of things. We can even
Right.
lie to ourselves, but
Right.
there's a way in which I think we can interpret, or we can, interpolate from our behavior what it is we truly believe and what it is we truly value, I think. And I wonder I wonder about that because I have that same experience in myself that I'll often say I want something and then I'll find myself procrastinating or just doing something else. And then I'll
Right.
wonder, does that evidence that I don't really want that thing? Or is there something in the way, so to speak? Is there a limiting belief? Right. So, all right. Well, thank you.
It's a last statement. The people I love can't read my heart, but they can read my conditions fluently. The most honest statement of what I believe is what I protect. And that's my one good thing.
Thank you. Awesome.
You're welcome.
Well, good. Well, the last part of the conversation that I had hoped to have today touches on relationships, right? And Dean, I'm not sure if this is the creative part of me resisting completing something, actually publishing and putting it out into the world, this book about prayer, which I will do.
Yes.
And for years, I've known that I want to write a book about relationships, that I have started to research this already, ask people their experience, their opinion, what they do to make relationships great, to make relationships last. And what I thought I might do with you today was I thought I might explore those two questions. What does it take to make relationships great? What does it take to make them last? But as I'm saying that out loud right now, and as I'm at the beginning, near the end, somewhat near the end of publishing one book and formally beginning the research and the writing of another, I actually want to explore with you how you might go about a book about relationships, right? Just generally, like whether it's collecting stories, whether it's research, my own thoughts, practices, books that are maybe have been valuable for you when it comes, or people or experiences. So just anything broadly. And I know I didn't prep you for the fact that this is what I would want to explore with you today. But if you were, maybe the place I would start, and I know you might have your own thoughts, but I would ask, are there any books that have been valuable for you when it comes to, and I'm talking specifically about intimate relationships, about long-term committed relationships, although it could be in any form. But are there any books that, if I asked you, like, is there a book that has made a difference for you when it comes to relationships? How do you answer that?
Yeah, I'm going to start with, I find myself having, now that I've had more gray hair, I get asked this question and been married 35 years by younger people that have had their heart broken of trying to understand the idea of relationships. Like, what's the secret? And what I often tell them is that relationships it's based on two illogical human beings. And I love going back and looking at some of the earliest manuscripts. You could look at poems, you could look at art, you could look at music of just some of the best creators, the best linguistic humans trying to describe and explain love and explaining relationships through plays, through opera, right? I mean, it's just endless. Our most creative human beings trying somehow to explain this unexplainable. So now with that, what is Dean going to add to this? Probably very little, in this vast collection of these really unbelievable writings and artwork of trying to describe it. Now, one book that I'll tell you that was horrific for Melanie and I was called His Needs, Her Needs.
Harley. This is Harley, right?
I don't even know.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know, but this set us up terribly. Because if my memory of this book was, if you will meet my needs, then I'll meet yours. But if you don't meet mine, I am not going to meet yours.
Somebody gave that to me when I got married the first time, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was the wrong advice from Melanie and I. We were already doing that. We didn't need that level of encouragement. To get to this, yeah.
How did that book enter your life? did somebody give it to you? Did you find it in a
Yeah.
bookstore?
Yes, no, somebody gave it to us. I mean, we were years 2, 5, and 7 were really difficult years for Melanie and I.
It's
Year
interesting you
7, we
remember
both,
that. 2, 5, and 7. Okay.
well,
Tell
just
me,
because I
tell me more.
tell the story so often.
Yeah.
And it matches statistics of just, you look at divorce rates. Those are the big ones. If you can make it past year 7, you almost go to like year 20 or so is the next big spike. And a lot of that goes just by averages that when you hit your 20-year mark, you're typically in your mid 40s, right? This midlife crisis kind of a thing. And then you don't hit it again until where Melanie and I are now, where you're getting perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. Kids have moved out of the house, right? These are just known statistics of when relationships are stressed. It was after year 7 that Melanie and I had this aha moment that almost everything we've ever done professionally, there's ongoing continuing education that's required. And yet in this thing of relationship, we are making it up and winging it second by second. So then we set an expectation that at a minimum, at least once a year, we read a book, we go to a conference, we do something that is relationship, marriage specific with a very low bar that is probably going to be a complete waste of our time. And so at a minimum, we'll go to this conference and we'll just make fun of the other couples that we think, I bet they don't make it through the weekend. And we've gotten a lot of pleasure from that. But our goal has simply been if we can get one idea, one word, one sentence out of this moment that we otherwise wouldn't have ever been exposed to. And we've done that every single year since year 7. And so this September will be 35 years for us. And that's helped us tremendously. It's just, how do you find the hack to jump the low points? And so like one of those for us, I'm really, really good at holding a grudge. So Melanie will disappoint me, and then I could hold that for weeks. And she is unbelievable. She wakes up every single morning like it's a brand new day, like nothing happened the previous day, which just aggravated me to no end. So for 3 weeks, I'm sulking. So when she's like, what's wrong with you today? And I'm like, what do you mean what's wrong to me? I've been mad for 3 weeks. She's like, what are you mad about? Don't you remember when you said this? And she's like, you've got to be kidding me, which makes me even more mad. So our hack, we got it down to 5 minutes. So for 5 minutes, bitch and moan. Say the nasty thing you want to say, threaten to leave, right? Well, I mean, whatever you want to do. And then in 5 minutes, we're going to hold hands. Because here's what I know about her. Here's what she knows about me. It wasn't intentional, right? I'm a messy human being. I'm not talking about abuse, right? I'm not talking about those extreme things. This is just within the big ass bubble of just normal relationships. Because there's moments, brilliant, where I've looked across that table and I'm thinking, you were the worst mistake I've ever made in my entire life. And then 8 minutes later, I can think, you were the best thing that's ever happened to me. Like, how is this even possible? That level of pendulum swing. So one of our hacks was 5 minutes, right? That was it. One more quick hack. We go to these social things. They're not my favorite. They are not her favorite. And when she sees me really starting to get edgy, she'll catch my eye from across the room and will just give me a wink. And I mean, that resets me so quick. But had we not gone to that conference where someone brought that up, never would have discovered that. So these become these quick hacks for us to reset and enjoy the moment. And I could go on this topic forever.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll just reflect back to you, man, there's a lot in what you're sharing. And to be honest, before this conversation, I hadn't really thought about the journey of a relationship, of a long-term committed relationship, that of course it's like a YouTube video. There are drop-off points. People
That's it.
Quit watching.
That's
it. Right? So
that's a great illustration.
I had never thought about that, but that makes sense. And then to have awareness of that, right? That, part of what I'm going through, to some degree, this is normal, right? The specific aspects of it, the specific people, conversations, events are unique to me, but there's a universal aspect to this. And to just be aware of that. It's like, this is the crunch or the pain or whatever. there's
Right.
value in that to me. So I'm interested to dig more into those patterns, right? And to have the awareness. So that's one. Another thing of what you're sharing that stands out to me is this deliberate investment,
Mm.
right? That you've made a conscious commitment to investing in the quality of your relationship. And it sounds like some years it was kind of a bust, probably wasn't worth the time and money
Right.
and the effort that you
Right.
expended. But first of all, and this goes back to what we were just talking about, right? You're talking about the conditions and, this,
That's it.
you can see that and you're demonstrating it and there's value. There's value in that, right? Plus whatever together time you had and the memories you created and, the renewing the commitment each year and so forth. So I love that part of it. That's very thought provoking. And then, as you said, there are some what I would call gems that you have been able to pick up in like a shorthand, right? Because, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting this quote now, but there's something I read once about love is a language that ultimately only two people speak, right? Any given
Mm.
love, any given
Mm.
relationship is like a language that the two of you are creating that only you speak. And you've been fleshing out that language, giving more vocabulary, giving more terms and definitions and so forth. And of
Yeah,
course,
we
that's
call
going to
those
have the
remember
impact.
wins.
Mm,
Going back to the AI music, I've taken many of these phrases that Melanie and I have, and it's not for commercial use, it's just for my own entertainment. From the very first date, it was a Sadie Hawkins, for those that know what that is. It's when the lady asks the guy to this, event.
you're
So
so
Melanie asked
traditional.
you,
So,
right? Yeah, where Melanie said, "Hey, would you go with me?" That's just a phrase that Melanie will use all the time to me. If "Hey, would you?"
Mm.
It is all kinds of means like, "Hey, would you choose me again?" Or second, "Hey, you wanna go get intimate later tonight?" And she'll say it in the weirdest times. Like, we just gave birth to our first son. He's screaming. Her tears have not even dried on her cheek yet, and she catches my eye. Right, doctors and nurses running around, and she goes, "Would you?" But those become great phrases for us that locks it in. And so we were just recently introduced to this idea. Like, do you know how many times you're going to have the opportunity to fall in love with Heather again? Any guesses over the average, 50-year marriage? About 10 times. The opportunity. And some of those times you won't. And so you're just going to wait for that next cycle to come around. Because there's those early years of no kids, and then there's kids for a long time. And then there's teenage kids, and then you have career changes. You are not going to be in love with that woman because she's not going to be the same woman. She's going to change, and the next version of her may not be your favorite. Let me reverse this. I'm sure of those 10 that Mel and I've already gone through, several of those, I was not her favorite. But the next one's coming, and you're going to have a chance to fall in love with that version of them. So watching my parents now that are they both just turned 78 this summer. They've never needed each other more than they do right. Just because of health, some level of isolation. No one will put up with them the way that they can put up with each other. And had they made choices to not get till now, they'd be very lonely individuals. And so I think about that. I think about my grandparents when they were in their 90s. Talk about could not stand him. 35 to 48 years old, right? That 12-year window. But I'm so glad we stuck it out
Well,
because I've never
especially.
needed him more. Yeah, it's fascinating
Well,
to me.
and you wouldn't be here. Right?
No, for sure not.
Right. Someone pointed that out to me. I thought it was an interesting observation that essentially, right, uh, every marriage, every life begins from a place of love, right? Two people coming
Right,
together by choice. I mean, I get there's
right.
arranged marriages and there are
Yeah,
exceptions,
which do
but
very, very well statistically, by the way.
Yeah, which is also an interesting thing to look at. Um, yeah, I'm just making notes here. This is super helpful for me. One of the things that I also wanted to talk about, what you're bringing up, this to me is like one of the major themes or assertions of this project, or a hypothesis I'll be testing as I do the research and so forth, is that relating is a skill,
Mm,
right? Just like hitting a baseball or driving a stick shift or baking a cake. And yeah, some people might have a talent for it, a knack for it above others, but still basically anyone can learn it. Anyone can do it. And it's not innate in us, the knowledge or the skill to make a relationship last and to make a relationship great. And part of it, I think, does involve, how do I say this? Like being willing to reconfigure our own interiority, right? That's a fancy way of saying like to change ourselves inside to whatever that might mean. Patience, generosity, acceptance, these kinds of things. And
yes.
there are thoughts, there are behaviors that we can learn, which most of us probably didn't learn from our parents or whoever was our
No.
model of relationship. And I wish someone had told me that, by the way. If you want a sense of what your future partner will be like as a partner, look at their
Right.
parents, right?
That's
Because
right.
that's the model of a relationship that they have likely internalized. And I had never, when I was dating, I never thought to look at the parents of the person I was dating.
When my oldest daughter, her boyfriend, in a traditional way, said, um, Mr. and Mrs. Miles, I'd like to talk to you guys later this afternoon. I mean, I knew what was about to happen. He was going to ask me for permission to marry my daughter. And I'd been planning for that conversation since that little girl was born, right? Like this guy didn't stand a chance.
You
So
had
his
your
name is Ricky.
45 ready.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I told him, I said a couple things because they were in their late 20s. I said, you don't need my permission, right? I mean, you guys are adults at this point. What you're looking for is my blessing. Because I can make this easy for you, or I can make this really difficult for you. I said, but I have questions for you, of which after you guys get married, none of my business. But they are today because she's still my daughter. But you don't have to answer them. And so for an hour and a half, brilliant, I took this guy through all these questions. And at the end, my wife was like, well, that was thorough. But two questions I asked Ricky was, what do you think about what's one thing your dad can do that would make your mom's experience in the space of marriage better? And I really didn't even care what he said. I just wanted to know, was he paying attention? And he had an answer. I said, what's one thing your mom can do that would make your dad's experience in this relationship that they have, what would make that better? Again, it wasn't what he said. I just wanted to know, was he paying attention to it? And so he was, and I was impressed by the answers because I completely agree with you because he's probably more than likely going to follow that same pattern with my daughter. Is he paying attention? Because if you can pay attention, there's a chance you can grow, right? You can change. But if you can't see it, it's
So
over.
what was the rest of that 90-minute interrogation like?
So when I asked my father-in-law, I'm like, hey, I'd like to marry Melanie. He just said, okay. Like it would have been more difficult to me return something at Walmart without a receipt than it was for this guy just to give me his daughter. And it struck me that it should never be that easy. Like if you're going to follow this traditional path, I should have had to be able to produce evidence of my love for this person and my ability to take care of this person. And so for 26 years, I had been thinking about that, waiting for the moment if this might happen. And so I was just curious about, because these two were friends for a long time before they started dating. What do you guys fight about? Who picked the last fight? How did that get resolved? Who do you think is going to have the more strong career? How are you guys going to handle that? Who's going to be the one that feels like they're giving up more than they're getting? Have you guys talked about that? I mean, just all these things were, man, I stumbled along the way. And so at the end, he asked me, he was like, Dean, he's like, which of these questions would have been the most difficult for you to answer? And I said, every single one of them, because no one asked me these questions. And in my heart, I really believe that I wish somebody would, because I think it would have given me a chance to have at least some forethought before I just stumbled into these really, really sticky conversations with a new bride of which I did not know how to maneuver through at all.
It seems you've figured it out, or at least you figured it out for 36 years.
Yeah, well, a lot of luck along the way. And, after that year 7, really got intentional with it. Of just even, just realizing I'm going to change and she's going to change and we're going to have to fall in love with this new version of that person. And if you don't, it's okay, because there's going to be another evolution again. That just helped us out tremendously. It takes the pressure off, because sometimes it clicks. Sometimes it doesn't. But I've learned I can't trust my emotions in that.
It's interesting.
They just swing too wildly.
Well, I know we're about the time to wrap this conversation up, so maybe I'll just put a few things into the mix for future exploration, certainly for my research. One is, I heard when you talked about, you look across the table and you think, this is the worst decision I've ever made, and this is like the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'd never heard this term until I listened to an interview that Tim Ferriss did with Dr. Terry Real. And Dr. Real introduced this idea of normal marital hatred. And I was like, whoa. And, one of the things you said was, I've given talks all around the world for decades on this, and I've never had one person come up to me after and say, what did you mean by that? It's like, so that's an interesting thing. Again, what's part of the path that any of us are likely to experience. And then the other, this is part of what I really want to explore as I get into this, is about, because you talk about re-choosing, right? We're always changing, we're always evolving, and we get to fall in love again, or we have the opportunity to.
Right.
And when to leave, right?
Sure.
When is it in our best interest, or the collective to say, look, it's been a good run. We've both, we've grown, we've enjoyed, we've learned, whatever. And let's not continue this. So that's an interesting thing, is how to know when that's the move. So I'll put a pin in that as because that can go from when you're dating. How do you know when it's time to end? Like, this isn't really going anywhere, versus no, it's time to commit. That's on the front end. But then a decade in, 2 decades in, how do you know when that's the thing to do? I'm so curious.
It's a great question.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that, because I certainly have an opinion.
Yes, I love to hear it. Okay, awesome. Well, Dean, as we wrap up today's conversation, again, the first of a series, exploring these subjects of prayer, of relationship, of discovering along with you, what's one good thing that's happened to you, or that you've done or discovered in a week? What's coming up for you as we wrap up this one?
Just the importance of exploring your beliefs. So both the known unknowns and maybe even the potential unknown unknowns, it's worth sitting with, sometimes alone, sometimes bring in some wise counsel to help you explore your beliefs, because from there you have then the chance to then, what do I want to protect? Those conditions, so that I could then benefit from the output of it. I think to have the belief and not to understand how to protect or value the conditions is a missed opportunity. That's what I'm reminded of.
Right. Well, good. Well, I hope this has been valuable. It's been enjoyable for me. It's been valuable for me. Even if no one watched, if no one listened. And of course, I hope they do, and that they benefit from it, that they've taken away something, even if it was only our enthusiasm for something we talked about today, a little bit of energy, a little bit of brightness. Maybe it's an idea, a perspective, even a tool, I would say a tool. But whatever it is, I hope that if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, that you receive our gratitude and wishing you every good thing.
Well said. We'll see everybody next week.
Okay. Thanks, Dean.
Thank you, Brian.